Great evening, everyone. Great evening, everyone. My name is Lakiana Drury, and thank you for attending tonight's final virtual candidate forum with the Portland Urban League. We have two exciting forums tonight for Circuit Court Judge for District 2, Position 11 in Lane County, and for District 3, Position 14 in Marion County. Again, my name is Lakiana Drury. I'm the founder and executive director of Respond, a local nonprofit here in Portland, Oregon that works to empower young Black men. And again, thank you for joining us tonight. Before we get started, I want to thank our community partner, Muslim Education Trust, for co-hosting tonight's forum, as well as several others that happened this month and last month. Without their efforts and support, tonight's forum would not be possible. I also want to highlight the importance of voting. Voting is not just an every 4-year event for president, but it's also a yearly thing for local elections that are as impactful, if not more impactful, on local events here in Portland and surrounding areas. The deadline to register for vote is next Tuesday, October 8th, so please get your ballots in. The election will be on Tuesday, November 8th. It is extremely important to vote. We know that Black community members and other underrepresented groups traditionally don't vote in as high as numbers, and that's reflected in a lot of policies across the area. So please register. There's information on the Urban League's website if you want to find out how you can do so. Tonight, we will feature one candidate running for Circuit Court Judge for District 3, Position 14 in Marion County, the Honorable Judge Arius Johnson Jr. Please do note that Judge Johnson Jr. is married to Nikenge Harmon Johnson, the president and CEO of the Urban League of Portland. She was not involved in the planning or presentation of this forum. Candidate Amy Queen, who's also running for this position, was invited to participate, but is not able to be here due to scheduling conflicts. Our second forum of this evening will feature two candidates running for a Circuit Court Judge for District 2, Position 11 in Lane County, the Honorable Judge Beatrice Grace and Oregon State Representative Marty Wild. All candidates are here to highlight their campaign proposals and answer community questions on potential future Circuit Court Judge for District 2, Position 11 in Lane County, and District 3, Position 14 in Marion County. For the first half of tonight's events, we will be having an opening statement, questions, and closing statement for Circuit Court Judge, District 3, Position 14 in Judge County with Judge Johnson Jr. And then for the second half, we will be doing the opening statements, questions, and closing comments for Circuit Court Judge, District 2, Position 11 in Lane County with Judge Beatrice Grace and Representative Marty Wild. As you can see, it's a mouthful of names and numbers in there, so please bear with us. Tonight's forum will be exciting. It'll be an informative event, but we also want to keep it orderly. I don't want to have to kick anybody out. I haven't had to do so yet, so we'll keep it a fair and orderly forum. Just remember a couple of these rules as we're going through. Please remain muted if you're not answering a question. This is obviously really important, so we're not picking up background noise in your house, as well as we're able to hear each candidate speak and share their points. Each candidate will have 2 minutes to answer to give their opening statements, and that's also the same for each of the questions. And we do ask that you stay within those time limits. There's between 4 and 6 questions, just depends on how much we're able to get through during the forum itself. Broad topic areas revolving around criminal justice, the candidate's perception of justice, and their role in administering it. This is obviously a huge focus for us, as we said, with the Urban League representing large percentages of the Black community, which are disproportionately impacted by the criminal justice system. After each question is answered, you'll have after each question is asked, each participant will have 2 minutes to answer the questions. If you go over that time limit, we will message you via the chat to let you know that your time is running up or if you have ran over your time. You'll get a 30-second timer as well as one final reminder once the time is completed up. So we're going to start off with our District 3, Position 14 in Marion County with Judge Johnson Jr. And we would like to start with your opening statement. Again, you have 2 minutes and you may begin now, Judge.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for inviting me. Thank you to the Urban League. Thank you to MET. Thank you for Word is Bond. I appreciate the opportunity to come and let people know that I'm running to retain my seat. So I actually have the seat. So I like to say I'm not in a race. She's in a race. She's actually chasing me, my opponent. My platform is experienced because I believe I have the experience to do the job. I'm one of the more experienced judges on the bench. Fairness, because I actually do the job. Every day I have to be fair, treat people with dignity, give them their day in court, and then community. I'm from Marion County, so I realize that the decisions I make affect the community around me. I'm also invested in my community as a mentor, as somebody who does presentations, as somebody who just looks out for his neighbor. So that's my opening statement, just give you an idea of who I am as an individual, and just I'm really proud and grateful to be here.
Thank you, Judge Johnson Jr. So for our first question, if you can please provide us with a brief summary of your duties as circuit court judge and share a document or principle that guides you in your daily work. The document could be something such as the Bill of Rights or the Black Panther 10-point platform. It could be a book that you've read, or perhaps a message from a mentor. You have 2 minutes. And if you want me to repeat the question, I can.
Repeat the first part of it.
Yeah, yep. The first part is if you can just give a brief summary of your duties as circuit court judge.
Today, I was on trial. That's why I'm a little late. I had a trial, individual charged with multiple counts of sex abuse. There were enhancement factors. So not only did we have to preside over a trial, didn't get the verdict, we also had to have a time for enhancement factors. So I do that. I preside over trials. I do civil trials. I do family court trials. I do stalking orders. I do immediate dangers regarding children. And if you want to know the document that guides me every day, it's the Constitution. Both the Oregon and the federal Constitution guides me. Being fair, giving everybody day in court, the 14th Amendment, the Fourth Amendment, the Fifth Amendment, the Sixth Amendment. I'm constantly guided by those principles because I believe that all the other stuff you named is derivative of the Constitution, because that's what says we are all supposed to be treated equal under the law.
Well said. Thank you. Question number 2, please provide your insight into your view of the role of the justice system in rehabilitating individuals and promoting successful re-entry into society for individuals who have served their time.
As a judge, I don't really see much of that. A lot of it, I see people on probation. So I see them trying to get back and trying to mainstream. And the way I talk about rehabilitation and deterrence, and, I believe that we need to move our dockets a little quicker, because studies have shown that not the severity of punishments that deter, but swift and sure punishments is what deter. So I think if we can be more efficient about how our courts run, less lag time, more definitive penalties, I think you would see more deterrence, because individuals would take consequences more seriously. And other than that, I do think there needs to be more, just outside of it, more individuals who can create programs other than incarceration, other than something that takes something away from you. Let's try to do more things as far as, because I find a lot of people who come in front of me are missing something. We need more services, more individuals to try to help these individuals capture something they're missing that they didn't get from school, they didn't get from their parents, and try to help people on the front end a little more. And I think you'd see less problems on the back end, if that makes sense.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense. Appreciate that answer. Question 3 kind of goes off of what you're just saying about presiding over both civil and criminal matters. Please describe how you envision or interpret the role of a judge during these types of trials.
I'm a ref. That's why, I'm really a stickler about better training our lawyers, because I want the lawyers to just do their thing, do their job, do what they get paid for. And if that's really true, you won't hear me. I am just there to make sure rights are protected, in criminal cases, regardless of the defendant having an attorney, I still need to make sure that attorney is competent. I still need to make sure that the right questions are being asked and that this client's, rights are being protected. I have family matters. Sometimes when I have pro se individuals, neither one who have attorneys. So my role sometimes is, can I broker a settlement? Because I try to stress the families, do you really want the court making decisions about who should see your kid and for how long? And also stressing them, look, if you can come up with your own compromise, you'll stick to it better if it's something you came up with. And then also trying to stress to these families that come in front of me, like, look, the court shouldn't be in your family. So let's try to resolve this so you can get strangers out of your family so you can go back about healing. So it depends on what it is. In some cases, I'm trying to guide pro ses. Some cases, I'm trying to protect clients. I'm trying to keep the proceedings moving in an orderly fashion. And even in civil, I'm trying to do that as well. I'm trying to control the attorneys, keep them streamlined, make sure the questions are what they're supposed to be, the evidence is what they're supposed to be, and just maintain control so we can have an orderly manner in which to mete out justice, settle disputes, and come up with ways to make the public function a little bit better under our social contract.
Thank you for that. Question 4, based on the most recent census, we know that Oregon is growing more and more diverse, especially in rural spaces, but Oregon's judicial system is not reflective of the communities they serve most of the time. What are your plans as judge to gain cultural competency in maybe areas that you don't have? And how do you plan to take consideration of communities of colors, specific needs, experiences, and history when presiding over these cases?
First, I don't like to call it cultural competence. I like to call it cultural conscious, because, people think once you're competent, you don't have to do it anymore, but culture is a constantly evolving thing and means different things to different people. So I just have to be aware that whoever comes from me in front of me, they may have a cultural perspective that's different from mine. So I'm trying to identify that. And I feel my prior job, my experience going back to when I worked for DOJ as a director of civil rights, that was my job, to go out to just all types of social justice organizations. So yes, I have visited MET, the Muslim Educational Trust. I've worked with the Oregon Muslim Bar Association. I've worked with the Oregon Asian Pacific American Bar Association. When I was working for that, I used to do the Black Male Achievement Initiative. I think we also worked with Word is Born. So since I've been here, I've been always giving of myself. Now we're talking about the community aspect of what I do. I've done talks here to Chemeketa, which is a community college here. I've done Know Your Rights seminars. I mentor at the high schools for the classroom law project. I'm also a mentor at law students, something called Opportunity for Law in Oregon, which is OLEO. And it's an Oregon State bar program designed for diverse and culturally diverse first-year law students, where they bring them together for Hood River and expose them to judges and lawyers who are already here in Oregon, to give them an idea about how to practice here and the benefits of practicing here. And one of the reasons I became a judge is because I wanted to be a role model to those students. I wanted to show them, like, look, regardless of what your background is, your cultural perspective, you truly can achieve your goals here in Oregon. You don't have to go back to Atlanta or California. There are opportunities here. So in everything I do, I'm trying to be an example. I'm trying to be a role model. I am trying to shift the cultural framework of what's already here.
Fantastic. Really appreciate the comments on cultural competency, because I agree. It's a floor, not a ceiling. What is a bias or prejudice that you currently struggle with, and how do you work to overcome that prejudice or bias?
My bias is being here in Marion County, worrying about everybody that comes before me, whether they have good or ill will towards me. I'm in an election, so I get a lot of pushback from a lot of people. I've had, just some unfortunate incidences. And I have to fight that feeling that everybody's going to treat me like that. And the way I've been doing it, quite honestly, is taking care of my physical fitness, working out, doing guided meditation, doing those things to make my mind strong so I don't let feelings of paranoia, feelings of marginalization, feelings of isolation, as long as I don't let those things overtake me and I can always maintain my temperament, that's how I overcome it. Trying not to react, trying to understand, once again, understanding the culture that's here in Marion County and understanding it's been a long time brewing. I'm a new thing. People are going to react, how they're going to react. And I am responsible to how do I react to those reactions. So just trying to maintain myself, understand what I'm dealing with, understand what I'm capable of and who I am, and keep it moving.
Thank you. The sixth question you already answered, sixth and final question, excuse me, which was how do you give back to the community? So I'm gonna come up with another question, which is, I'm excited for that because it's like gonna go a little bit off script and I don't know if they're allowing me to do that, but we're gonna go with it. So if you're elected to another term, what is something that you would do differently as judge this time around? Maybe an improvement or an area that you would like to, that maybe you didn't do so well in this current term that you would like to do differently or maybe focus on more?
I've only been on the bench since March 1st, so I'm still kind of learning and I'm still kind of feeling my way, but there are some stuff on the horizon I'd like to get involved in. I mean, we have a criminal defense attorney crisis. I want to try to turn my attention to that. I believe our law students here aren't getting enough practical experience in law school. I would like to see how I can look into that, possibly more clinic work. One of the terms I like to use is there isn't enough performance under pressure for our law students. I'd like to see that a little bit more and continue to be a mentor, continue to reach out and do what I'm doing. We have some issues. There's a implicit bias video for jurors that's been floating around. So I'm trying to decide, where I fall on that. So I have a couple of things in the works that I'm trying to find the right place and time to exert my perspective.
Thank you so much, Judge. We're now going to move to your closing statement. Let me just get myself on track here. So you have 2 minutes to give a closing statement and wrap up any final thoughts that you have, maybe things that we didn't touch on. I wish we had a little bit more time to dig into things, but I do realize we're on a tight timeline here. But your closing statements, you have 2 minutes and they start now.
Like I said, Judge Arias Johnson Jr. here in Marion County. My website is judgejohnsonforjustice.com. And when you go there, you'll see my tagline is experience, fairness, and community. Like I said, I've been a lawyer and practicing law for 20 years. I've been living my whole life to do this thing, to be a judge. This is my dream. Fairness, I've been on the bench since March 1st. I invite people to my courtroom, courtroom 4B. I'm one of the only public officials. You can actually come into my office, watch me do my job, and you can see that I do live by fairness, dignity, respect, giving people their day in court, and finally, community. I am invested in my community, and that's all people. I don't discriminate on who's my community because, it takes a village to raise a child, but it also takes a village to build a village, So in closing, if you care about experience, fairness, in your community, you will vote to retain Judge Arias Johnson Jr. on November 8th.
Judge Johnson Jr., thank you so much for your time, your service in the community. We wish you the best moving forward with the election and in life in general. Again, we just want to please note that Judge Johnson Jr. is married to Nikenge Harmon Johnson, the president and CEO of the Urban League of Portland. She was not involved in this event, in the planning of it or the execution. Candidate Amy Queen was invited to participate in tonight's forum, but had scheduling conflicts. Thank you again. And we're going to move on to our second forum of the evening. Take care, Judge.
Thank you.
Okay, let me just flip us over here. So we're going to move into our second forum of tonight, which is our Circuit Court Judge, 2nd District Position 11, with the Honorable Judge Grace, as well as Representative Wow. We have flipped the coin for who's going to be going first, and that's going to be Judge Grace. You will have 2 minutes to give your opening statement, and then we will follow up with Representative Wow. Judge Grace, your 2-minute opening statement begins now.
Thank you so much. Thank you to the Urban League of Portland for this opportunity. It's great. I'm recovering from COVID, so if I cough, I might take a little moment and mute myself, and pass the buck on to Representative Wilde. There's no one right path to becoming a judge. A healthy judiciary and democracy require diversity. My non-traditional path has included 25 years being a nurse. 22 of those years were spent in emergency departments working with every type of person, every race, national origin, gender, disability, age, and working with people on the worst days of their life and helping them come away with the best decision and making those tough decisions with them under pressure and in time constraints, and trying to help raise them up to being their best self and being able to move forward in their life. I went to law school based on my experiences in the medical community and the inequities I saw there. I went back to law school when I was 41. I was a single mother of 2 children, ages 5 and 10 at that time. I then became a civil litigator representing injured people, not corporations or the government. And I also spent several years clerking for Judge Casabai in both Lane County Circuit Court, where I really fell in love with the trial court. I see it as kind of the ER of law. There's just every kind of litigant there, and it's fast paced, it's moving, it is making those tough decisions under pressure. I also worked with Judge Casabai in his appointment, his historic appointment to the federal bench as the first Muslim American jurist, and wrote well over 50 complex civil opinions for him and helped him set up his chambers. So before coming to the bench, I already had a lot of experience from working behind the bench closely with judges. I've also lived and worked in metropolitan and rural areas of Oregon and Lane County, and I've been a litigant myself in family law matters and in tax court, and I know what it feels like to look up at a judge and hoping that you are getting a fair and impartial decision maker. I'm very proud to be here. My opponent and I both applied for this position. I was chosen by my community and then progressed to more interviews, and eventually to Governor Brown, where I was eventually appointed. And I'm just
Judge Grace, we're at time. Thank you so much for that opening statement. We'll be able to hear more from you. We're going to move on now to, is it Representative Wilde or Wow?
Wilde, please.
Wilde, okay.
It's
I
fine.
really want to make
I get
sure
that a lot.
I've got a long first name myself, so I want to make sure that we are getting
no
names
problem.
correct. Representative Wilde, you have 2 minutes for your opening statement, please.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Drury, and thank you to the Urban League. I know my mother was working at the Urban League when she was writing her dissertation, and it was really what let her finish it and provide for us. I've been in practice for 25 years, and I've fought for justice here and overseas through 3 overseas deployments, the Middle East, Afghanistan. I've litigated down in Texas, but I find that stories often most important in showing my values. So I want to tell you the story of Mr. Patterson, a gentleman I represented when I first became a defense attorney down in Texas when my wife was still on active duty. Got the file on Mr. Patterson. He was accused of threatening someone with a knife. He was facing up to 20 years in prison, but he had a probation offer, and he was somewhat unusually still in jail. So I went down to visit him, and I explained he had a probation offer. He could be out tomorrow. Mr. Patterson happened to be a Black man, and he said, "I didn't do it. I'm not bleeding." I said, "Well, that's fine. I'm happy to ask for a speedy trial." It was the first time anybody could remember asking for a speedy trial. I said, "You're probably going to have to sit in jail until it happens, goes through." And he said, "I'm willing to do it because I'm not guilty." So we took it to trial. We got through, and the first thing that really made me want to be a judge in that case is we got through jury selection, and not only were there no Black people on the jury that was selected, but there were no minorities whatsoever. And I asked the judge to let us start over on the jury, and she said no, that I couldn't point to any specific misconduct of the prosecution office. But I just looked at that and thought, is this fair? The judge had the authority to throw it out and say, let's pick a fair jury, and she chose not to. So we go through the trial, and the thing that had really helped Mr. Patterson prove his innocence was that there had been a prior false allegation against him by the same witness the same accuser. But when I tried to bring it up, the judge again shut me down. And again, it was a discretionary decision. But even though it was a specific false allegation against Mr. Patterson again, she wouldn't let it in. Fortunately, the jury saw through it. They did return a not guilty verdict in about 10 minutes. But after that trial, I thought, it's time. It's time to go for the bench to make sure that everybody receives the equal protection of the laws that they're promised. And that was what inspired me to apply to become a judge. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Wilde. We'll now begin the question and answer portion of our Circuit Court Judge District 2, Position 11 in Lane County Forum in reverse alphabetical order. So for the first question, we will start with Representative Wilde. You all both touched on the justice system in your opening statements. Justice is the foundation of our democracy, but outcomes in the justice system are often very closely tied to skin color and economic privilege. What are your thoughts on access to justice for all? What does the phrase justice for all really mean to you, and why is it important? Representative Wilde, you have 2 minutes. Go ahead.
Thank you for the question. I've served all over. I've seen justice systems that work. I've seen justice systems that didn't. One of the challenges of being a judge is, to an extent, you're the tip of the iceberg, that a lot of stuff has happened in the street before it gets there. I'm proud of the work we did, both on the Eugene Police Commission and on the Judiciary Committee in the State House on police reform, bringing some of this stuff to light, especially the disparate treatment of minorities by police in the community. And I think really one of the most critical things we did was start providing that education on implicit bias. And because we all have implicit biases. Few of us think of ourselves as actively racist or sexist. But the way we overcome those is through conscious effort. And what we did was do data-driven policing to show those biases back to the police and help them overcome them. So that's some work I'm really proud of. I think that's one of the things we've done to sort of get at that foundational behavior that really drives disparate treatment within the justice system. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative. Judge Grace, I'll ask you the same question. Justice is the foundation to our democracy, but outcomes are often tied to skin color and economic class. What are your thoughts about access to justice for all? What does the phrase justice for all mean to you, and why is it important? You're on mute.
Thank you. Justice for all is absolutely the cornerstone of our democracy, and the judicial branch, as a separate branch of government, is responsible for upholding democracy in a certain way and upholding justice in a certain way. And what that means to me is that every single litigant deserves a fair and impartial judge who has not decided on issues until they come before the judge, who has not made advanced determinations about political issues before they come in front of the judge and in the factual way that they appear in that particular case. I have had diverse experiences working in metropolitan communities, in rural communities with, as I've said, in my experience as a nurse and in courtrooms as a judge. And those experiences have taught me over and over again how important it is to remain impartial in the moment, to think about the rules that guide you, whether those are medical rules, whether those are rules of law, to guide you in the moment to make the best decision based on the situation in front of you. And if we don't do that, then we just have people deciding things based on their particular biases. And no one can know then what the law is going to bring or have certainty in the law. This is an ongoing progress and process with liberty, and it requires constant attention and vigilance. And some of the work I do to try to help in those in that fashion outside of my role as a judge is I work on the Campaign for Equal Justice. I've been on the Lane County Steering Committee for that for many years now, trying to get funds to underserved populations in our county. I have worked closely with Judge Casabai on diversity issues in our county, many conversations and ongoing conversations with the community about implicit bias. I will be using more and more the video that was recently done in my jury and jury trials. And those are just some of the issues. I also work on the Thank you.
We're at time, Judge. Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you for that. Thank you for that so much. But you're actually up again. We're at question number 2, and you're going to be going first for this one. What judicial system resources and programs do you wish more people knew about? What sentencing alternatives, options, or programs do you think aren't shared enough? You have 2 minutes.
Well, I think that an important component about that question actually is that the courtroom should be absolutely the last place that anybody ever is. And to go back to a comment that Judge Johnson made earlier, we're seeing people at the last end, and we are not putting the resources into keeping people out of these situations in the first place. So we've done a really good job lately, more so, with coming up with alternatives like drug court, mental health court, veterans court, for instance. And so those are great that and various diversion programs, but we're still treating people with those options on the back end. And I know, prisons have lots of programs to get people into, but again, it's the difference between analogously, preventive medicine as opposed to somebody showing up in the ER where it's the most expensive place for them to get care and being diagnosed there with their stage 4 cancer, rather than earlier if they'd had insurance and being treated appropriately then. We need to do a lot more work on the front end with kids. We have intergenerational trauma that leads people to a whole slew of bad decisions in their life. They have few resources. And I think that's really where the judiciary needs to be in constant communication and talking with folks maybe in our legislature and executive branch to try to, keep telling them how this isn't the right place to treat mental illness, is not to throw people in jail or in prison. It doesn't work well. We can sure get people tuned up pretty fast. If we need them there for a fitness hearing, we need to be doing that for people long before they ever show up in the criminal justice system. And so I appreciate the programs we have now, but I think there's a lot more work to be done.
Thank you, Judge Grace. Representative Wild, do you want me to repeat the question or do you have it?
Would you please?
Yes. So what judicial resources, system resources, and programs do you wish more people knew about? What sentencing alternatives, options, and programs do you think aren't shared enough? You have 2 minutes.
Yeah, I would say certainly treatment courts are something that's underappreciated. I was a drug court prosecutor. I was a domestic violence court prosecutor. I've been deeply involved with funding and starting veterans courts and making sure that every veteran does it. And we do these things because those populations have specific needs to do what we really want, which is to have this never happen again, to have them get better. One of the things I think we lack in our circuit court here, but have in our municipal court, is a community mental health court. And I think that is very appropriate for a lot of cases that where the central issue is really the person's mental health. I think I would also say one of the alternatives that's really deeply underappreciated is guardianship as opposed to civil commitment or aid and assist. Sending somebody up on aid and assist, sending someone to the state hospital deprives them of substantially all their liberty. There is a step down, which is guardianship, where the person still retains a lot of their rights, but receives the treatment that they need in a setting that protects society from the problems they might have. And I think that's what everybody wants, is that people to be healthy and not repeat the incident that brought them before the court.
Thank you, Representative Wilde. We're now going to move on to question number 3, which is going to go back to you, Representative Wilde. Based on our most recent census, we know that Oregon is growing more diverse, especially in rural spaces, but Oregon's judicial system does not reflect the communities that they serve. What are your plans as judge to gain cultural competency, or as Judge Johnson said, cultural consciousness? And how do you plan to take into consideration our community's specific needs, experiences, and history when presiding over cases?
Well, yes, Lane County has traditionally not been a very diverse place. I grew up in rural Lane County and really only knew one minority. But when my parents split up, my mom moved to Baltimore, and I lived in a majority Black city and went to a majority Black school. That was a really eye-opening experience because it really illuminated for me how people are people, and they come from different backgrounds, but we owe it to them to learn about each other and to overcome our unconscious biases. Since then, I've deployed all around the world, and I think the most important thing I learned is to ask a lot of questions and listen, because the success we had there with the military was often more due to listening than doing. That often the doing was just a small piece, but it really mattered when we listened to other people and empowered people to speak for themselves. Going forward in the courts, I think it is important. One of the problems we've had is under-resourcing of the entire justice system, including the courts. And what that means is people are coming before us and they're not being respected and they're not feeling heard. And as we heard from Judge Johnson, when that happens, when they're unable to work out their own issues, when they're unable to feel heard, the court's decisions aren't respected and we still continue to have conflict. So I think you have to ask a lot of questions and understand what's going on more, and don't assume that you know from where somebody else is coming from, especially if they come from a different background. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Representative. Judge Grace will ask you the same question. Based on the most recent census, we know that Oregon is growing more diverse, especially in rural spaces, but Oregon's judicial system is not reflective of these communities they serve. What are your plans as judge to gain cultural competency or cultural consciousness? And how do you plan to take into consideration community-specific needs, experiences, and history when presiding over cases?
That is such a multi-pronged question. I think that one thing that we're seeing a lot in rural Oregon, where I still live, is an increase, for instance, in our Latinx community. So we are having to grow, a lot more as a community in my small town of embracing more people of color and from different nationalities, many different nationalities coming here. And I'm watching that with my children in my local public school system. I have actually, when I clerked for Judge Casavai in federal court, one thing that was really great that he agreed to do, I asked him if he would come down as a person of color and as a Muslim American to my children's middle school and speak with students there and let them know he was a judge and answer their questions. I think reaching out, especially to younger people, and letting them talk with people and see people that are different than them in a position of authority, and helps them to, kind of re-gauge how they think about things. I think we need to be doing a lot more outreach. And as a judge, I would like to continue to do that kind of activity myself. I think a lot of kids don't envision people see a woman as judge. They've maybe heard about it. They've seen some now on the Supreme Court, but they don't have any contact with female judges. I think that's important. And I think that always making sure to, do things that just, being rote about. I'm trying to figure out ways in my courtroom of addressing people by gender correctly. And it's not always, it's not easy. It's uncomfortable for people. It's hard to know whether to ask someone in a public forum. So I'm trying to work with my staff right now about how to approach that issue in a meaningful way with litigants, and especially even with pro se litigants that may not know that they have that latitude to talk with me about those issues before we begin a procedure, in court. Playing the implicit bias video, for instance, there's a lot of small things we can do to try to keep our cultural competency moving forward. So I'm pretty active in trying to keep those communications going, and also just talking to people in the moment and meeting them where they are and asking questions and not being afraid to ask a bad question. Thank you.
For that. Yeah. One moderator's note I would like to make is just a suggestion: instead of using the word minority or minorities, which is a deficit-based word, potentially using the word communities of color or diverse communities. Just one note on that. And Judge Grace, we're back to you for question number 4. which is, what is a bias or prejudice that you currently struggle with? And how do you work to overcome that prejudice? And I would encourage both candidates to be as specific as possible with this question. Thank you. You have 2 minutes, Judge Grace.
That's a rough one. I think that we all have biases when we see someone that doesn't look like us, and I think that that happens. And so for myself, I just try to recognize if I get a feeling that I'm uncomfortable in any way around someone, and I try to look at, why might I be feeling uncomfortable? What is it that's causing me to feel this? And how am I going to address it? And how am I going to make sure that I look at that person as a person, and also respecting what their history may or may not be that I don't know, and how to engage in a conversation that's respectful, or whether it's appropriate for me to even engage in a conversation. So I think the first step for me is to identify that I might be feeling discomfort, and then trying to ascertain, like, what do I do from there? What questions do I ask? Do I ask questions? How do I approach this person? And I think that is an ongoing daily action that has to be taken. And it's very easy to make assumptions about people of color that come from what you think is a certain culture that may not. It just requires constant vigilance. And I think that the importance of that is that as a judge, I have to be impartial. I have to apply the law, but I also have to look at each person as an individual and meet them where they are. So it's really important that I'm identifying that in myself, and then asking people the questions so I can figure out where they are, so that I know how to meet them in the place where I can affect the best communication with that person.
Thank you, Judge Grace. Representative Wilde, you have the same question. What is a bias or a prejudice that you currently struggle with? How do you work to overcome that prejudice? You have 2 minutes. Go ahead.
Of course. I agree with Judge Grace in the sense that we all have biases against people who don't look like us. And what that often strikes home for me is when I volunteer for an organization called Egan Warming Center that provides shelter for the homeless when it gets cold outside. And people come in, and not only are they very diverse in different ways, but they're often quite rough in appearance. They often have problematic behaviors. And for me, I look at them and I think, there but for the grace of God go I, that I try to put myself in their shoes. I remember, this poor kid growing up in Western Lane County under fairly unpromising circumstances. And I remember how my community took care of me. And what would happen if they hadn't? What if they hadn't made sure I was fed and sheltered and educated? What if I didn't have healthcare to address my needs, especially coming back as a soldier? What if the VA hadn't been there for me? What if the ball had bounced a different way in my life? I've been very fortunate. I've worked hard, true, but I've also been very fortunate. And so when I look at those folks, I think, what could have been different for me that would have put me there? And that helps me try to understand them more. But I would say, like all unconscious biases, it requires a conscious effort. I think that's what we owe ourselves and the people around us, is to recognize when differences are making it difficult for us to understand other people and to make that effort.
Thank you both for those answers. I know that was a challenging question. And I would say, as a voter and as part of the public, we like to hear vulnerability and transparency from our elected leaders. So thank you both for that. We're going to move to our closing statements. You will each have 2 minutes to answer these questions, and we're going to go back in alphabetical order. So Judge Grace, you will have the first closing statement, and your 2 minutes begins now.
My life has never led me down a linear path or a traditional path. I didn't end up being a judge by following a traditional path. And that has given me a diverse set of experiences and a broad understanding of human issues. And it's shown me how to recognize justice, and also, like I think most of us, recognize injustice when we see it. And working with people from all walks of life, and for my entire adult life, and working with them under pressure and trying to remain impartial so I can make a good decision has been an excellent precursor to becoming a lawyer and continuing to work with people that have been injured. I've spoken about my experience as a nurse, as an ER nurse, and I've mentioned my hard work as a single mom. As a single mom going back to law school for a second career. And I've always chosen to challenge myself. I've done that by working hard, hand in hand with a judge who has pushed me and has taught me a lot. And I would just like to let people know that if they have any questions about my views on oppression, discrimination, or unfair ways that society treats people, that all of those experiences come with me every single day into the courtroom, to my jury trials, to my bench trials, to my criminal hearings, and in every single family law matter. All of that experience comes with me. I am very, very honored to have been chosen for this position, and I am pleased that my community chose me for this position based on that. They thought that my values were in line with what the bench needs. Our bench needs a civil practitioner. They need a plaintiff's lawyer. These are very, very lacking. We have a lot of people with criminal experience on our bench, and I'm pleased to be where I am. I'm grateful, and I love the hard work, and I love the hard decision making, and that's why I'm the right judge for Lane County. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Judge Grace. Do you have a website where people can learn more information about your work?
I do. Thank you. It is Retain Nurse Judge Grace.
Thank you so much.
I have a long list of endorsers from Senator.
We're at time at this point. But
thank you.
Thank you so much for being here, Judge Grace.
Thank you so much for this opportunity. Thanks.
Representative Wildy, you have 2 minutes for your closing statements as well. Go ahead.
Thanks. I mean, I could talk about the dozens of jury trials I've done. I could talk about my experience in criminal law, in civil law, which I've litigated employment cases. I could talk about my experience as a hospital counsel. I could talk about my experience as a plaintiff's attorney. I could talk about my experience as a family lawyer, specializing in helping LGBTQ folks. And I could talk about my experience as a probate lawyer. But I think one of the things, the most recent experience that's been very illuminating for me is actually teaching immigration and citizenship. That was what I was doing right before I came to this. And what I quickly realized when I looked at my extremely diverse class and considered all the just rampant inequities in there and the manifest failures to provide equal justice for all in that system, I looked at those students and said, they know more about this than I do in their lived experience. And from that point forward, I resolved to make at least half the classes about guests, talking about not just the programs they came through, but their lived experience of it, because that's what matters. And that's how we get to equal justice, is by listening to diverse voices. That's really important to me. I would say it's the commitment to equal justice that brings me to this and wanting to be a judge. And I would also say that includes a commitment to the law. And the law in Oregon is the Reproductive Health Equity Act, which places no limits on anyone's reproductive freedom. And I am proud to make a commitment to upholding that, despite the decisions from the Supreme Court. Thank you very much for the opportunity. I really appreciate it. And it's very nice to see the Urban League doing this work.
Thank you, Representative Wildy. Do you have a website that people can reach you at?
Oh, yeah. It's Wildy for Oregon, WILDEFOR, Oregon.com. And happy to also answer any questions from there as well.
Thank you both so much for being here. That is wrapping up our forum for this evening. As the Urban League's Circuit Court Judge for District 2, Position 11 in Lane County, and District 3, Position 14 in Marion County comes to a close, I want to give a special thanks to our audience members who submitted questions. We weren't able to get to all of those, but to also our partners at LNS Captioning and Open Signal for helping broadcast this event. We want to thank our community supporters and sponsors who also helped make this event possible. Thank you to our candidates, Honorable Judge Beatrice Grace, Oregon State Representative Marty Wildy, Judge Arias Johnson Jr. for participating tonight. And also a final note, Judge Johnson Jr. is married to Nikenge Harmon Johnson, President and CEO of Urban League, but she had no participation in making this event happen. Candidate Amy Queen was invited to participate in tonight's forum, but had scheduling conflicts. Please continue to stay with us as we continue to do more events like this in the future. We wish all of our candidates the best on the campaign trail and moving forward in their service. Want to extend all our support to our co-hosts behind the scenes who help make this possible. Audience, please remember that Urban League is a nonprofit organization that relies upon generous donations from community members like yourselves. You can learn more about the fantastic program that the Urban League has to offer at their website, ulpdx.org. And if you're able to, I really encourage you to vote. Your support is an investment to our Black community and the greater community of Portland in our robust wraparound programming that seeks to empower and change lives. The Urban League is hosting more events leading up to the election, including our canvassing days for City of Portland Charter Reform. We have one coming up on Saturday, this Saturday the 15th, and next Saturday the 23rd. The Small Business 101 virtual workshop on October 20th, and a vaccine clinic event on October 28th. Please visit ulpdx.org/get-involved to sign up and learn more. On behalf of the Urban League, on behalf of President Nikenge Harmon Johnson, the Board of Directors, and all the members, I want to thank you all for participating for today. If you're not a member of the Urban League of Portland, I encourage you to join or renew your annual membership. You can visit ulpdx.org to join the movement for justice and equity here in Oregon. Also, if you need assistance for voting or registering during the general election, staff at the Urban League are ready to talk with you. Reach out at our website or social media, or give us a call at 503-280-2600 for assistance. We will also be sharing the link for Oregon's Secretary of State voting and elections page on both platforms. I'm Lakiana Drury. Thank you for being here, and good night, and God bless to all.